Welcome to another Cutting Edge Show. I'm Mayor Omar Neal, the former mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, host of the You Got the Power syndicated radio talk show, but co host to the Cutting Edge Show. This show is being brought to you in part by the School of Public Health at the University of Maryland. This is the Cutting Edge, where we discuss all things health and wellness, COVID 19, and beyond. We're going to have an incredible show today. We all have experienced this. Someone in our lives, whether or not it's family members or friends, that we've either had to assist as they were going through health challenges or just mental health challenges, and that we've been the healer for those individuals. Now we're going to be talking about healing the healer. How do you heal yourself? And then we're going to deal with grief. Many people, particularly as it relates to COVID 19, lost family members and friends and acquaintances, coworkers. We're going to talk about how to process grief. Going to give you a lot of detail on that. And just in conversations, we got a tremendous uh, lineup. Uh, we have Dr. Tichelle Bordier, who is assistant professor at family science at the U of Missouri, University of Missouri. We also have Tiara Fennell, who is the director of the University of Maryland Center for Healthy Families. We also have Rosalind Selman, who is chaplain of Gilchrist Cares. And last, certainly but not least, Wayman Scott, Associate Director of the DEI at Gilchrist Cares. We got a lineup out of this world. And I'm telling you, I don't do this by myself. For those of you who've been watching us over the years, I got a sidekick. His name is Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. We call him Dr. T amongst these parts. He's a professor of School of Health. He's a professor at the University of Maryland and director for the Center for Health Equity at the University of Maryland. So we got this show going, Dr. T. Can you imagine what kind of show we have here, man? Good.
Mayor, you know it's
As they say down south, good gracious alive.
it's always good to be in the same space with you. And the topic, healing the healers.
Right.
We've reached back more than once to say thank you to
Mm-hmm.
all those people who are on the front line
Mm-hmm.
during the time when they were loved and people were clapping at 7 o'clock at night. And
Yeah.
then the time when they were being beaten up, when the people who didn't want to be vaccinated showed up at the
Yeah.
hospital wanting
Yeah.
the wrong thing.
Right.
And we got healthcare workers striking, my friend, in the streets. So there's a lot of healing going on,
Right.
and there's a lot of
Right.
grief. Even when there's not death, there can still be grief.
Right.
Maybe that's my question I should ask the experts. Is there a difference between grief and bereavement? I can't wait to unpack this because you know what? In the black community, I don't know how it is down in Alabama.
Yeah.
Funerals are like a celebration. It's like somebody then gone home to a better place, and they never
Well,
even say the word death.
well, Dr. Berdier, that she's from New Orleans, Nolens, right? So, they certainly have a celebration. They see death completely different there.
That's right.
And man, they do a parade down the street, and they twirling the it's not an umbrella, but it's kind of like an umbrella, man.
Okay, okay.
And they got a band going on, man. And you don't know what happened, but whatever happened, they are grateful for whatever it is because they realize that uh we are spirits having a human experience, not humans having a spiritual experience.
You know what? You have said that more than once, and now I'm seeing it come to fruition.
Right. Right. It makes all the sense in the world. Now, we don't do this by ourselves. We are out here out front and people see us. But there's a team behind the scene, headed up by Meg Jordan, our technical director, Saraya Khan, a social media coordinator, as well as Elijah Pugh Jr., sound designer.
I see you
Thank
still
you.
bouncing to his song.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't help but do it, man. We got groove, we got soul, right? That's so important. And people can catch us all over the social media space. You can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, as well as Twitter. We have some other platforms, social media platforms that so on. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter. You see the QR code there. You can just subscribe right there. And of course, you will get a newsletter each and every week. It chronicles our show as well as give you really great information that you can use during the course of the week. Just a wonderful document. We so elated to be able to put that out. So we are constantly giving people information, believing that when people get the proper information,
Right.
that's what we're doing, right? All right, Dr. T. I want to do something different today.
What's that?
I want to introduce the person, then I want to bring them up right away,
Okay.
right? And I want them to kind of introduce themselves to us, right, in the conversation.
All
Can we
right.
do that? Can
Let's
I?
try it.
Let's try that. That's different. Now, this is different. This is me just changing in the middle screen.
All right. Just don't
Okay.
be changing the secret sauce. But go ahead.
God, trust me, trust me. Here we go. Let's go to Dr. Bourdieu. Let's bring her up. You can read all about her, but let me say this before we bring her up. I've talked about this whole issue of death and dying and bereavement and all, but her name reverberates in that space. People are talking about going through her classes, and that when you're talking about a person who's really uh, versed in this subject matter, she ranks very, very high. And so it is a pleasure to have had the opportunity to meet her for the first time. Uh, just to have that kind of spirit is just to be in that presence is a blessing. So to behold her countenance and to have the brief conversation that we've had, I know that she's a friend for life. Would you all please bring up Dr. Bourdieu so we can hang out with her? Could you snap her up as we come
That's
in?
how we do it. We snap
we,
you
we
up to the
snap we
stage.
snap you in, that kind of thing. If you can unmute, we'd be ready to rock and roll with you. Let me
Hi.
say, I'm in Alabama, so that's not far from you know, you know, we,
Nolans.
we down south, kind
Oh
of,
yeah.
you know. But anyway, so wonderful having you with us and having the opportunity to have this most important conversation.
Yeah.
Tell I obviously there's so much about you that we don't know, but if you were to just put in capsule, um,
I would say that my life's work and purpose, quite frankly, has been to um, help further the understanding of the complexities of Black grief, grief in Black communities, Black families, Black youth. A lot of my work is focused on youth and young adults. A lot of it within that has been focused on homicide loss and gun violence.
mm,
Um, essentially, uh, proposing and actually not proposing, advocating, being an activist for providing supportive resources to youth instead of just trying to take the guns out of communities because that's not going to do it, the job. So I've spent
right,
my life's work trying to help further understanding of humanizing Black kids and families, and helping people understand why our rituals, particularly in New Orleans, are so exuberant. And I guess the only other thing that I would say, and there are other dimensions to me, I'm a researcher. I'm a program developer. I do trainings in schools and vice president of the National Alliance for Children's Grief. And I would also say that right during COVID, there was so much pain in the Black community and distress. It was just one more layer on top of so much else. Um, and I was on the ground more. I've never been an ivory tower professor.
Right.
There was
Right.
so much that I actually changed my position. So I'm actually still at the University of Missouri, but was funded for a grant that a grief reach grant that allows me to do work in communities and be more on the ground so that people are able to um, actually that I'm more accessible to communities than the restrictions that would be put on my time. So it was enough for me to make that much of a career shift. I'm still an academician,
Right.
but
Right.
I did change the way that I'm operating to allow more autonomy to be physically present because the need is that great and the pain that I witnessed was so severe um, and complex.
Dr. Roder, first of all, thank you. And I'm so glad as a fellow academician, the
Yes,
realization that we cannot live in the ivory tower, that we must take our science to the community
yes,
curbside. And that's what these polls represent. They represent a lesson that we've learned, especially during the pandemic. Why go where people already have trust?
Right.
And
Right.
they have trust in the barbershops and the beauty salons. And so,
yes.
like the
I actually
pan,
advertised there, and I have for years.
that's
That was
Wow.
where I've
wonderful.
actually found most of my participants throughout the years was, and I looked everywhere. But yeah, absolutely, I was so excited. Also, thank you, Mayor O'Neill and Dr. Thomas for having me. I appreciate the cutting edge, so I just wanted to give a major shout out for that, and then the collaboration with the barbershops and hair salons.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
It's indeed an honor. And just like the pandemic woke people up to what is public health,
Right.
sometimes they don't know the difference between public health and medicine. They know it now.
Hmm.
I can only imagine for you, what is a thanatologist? We've had all kind of ologists on, gynecologists, cancerologist. What is
Hmm.
a
No, this not no
thanatologist?
cancerologist, man.
Oncologist.
Oncologist, man.
Let me get it right.
You create some. You go start some confusement, doctor.
What is a thanatologist?
Yes. Well, I guess we could add to that that I'm a developmentalist and family scientist, but
Uh,
thanatologist is a is a specialized field is a specialized training education around death, dying, and bereavement. And
Wow.
bereavement is would be the grief we the our expressions and feelings after a death loss. Grief would be what we feel after any loss, death or non-death, and that's the official difference between the two. And I would say that Black populations deal with large amounts of grief and bereavement because we're dealing with death and multiple non-death losses, racism, just you will get to that.
yeah, yeah,
But so really it makes it further complicates the grief that we deal with when we're fatigued by it, quite frankly. So
yeah. I'm
Thank you.
so glad you're on the ground doing this work because people don't care how much you know until they know how your being there present is a direct uh, indicator of your caring. And so thank you for
you're
caring.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's bring up somebody else. I don't, but whoever's next. Well, Tiara Fennell. Let's go. She's assistant professor of couples and family therapy. Met her today. Well, you don't meet. Spirits don't meet. Spirits reacquaint, right? But just a wonderful spirit, a wonderful person, very jovial in her conversation with us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring her up and have this conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy to be here and grateful for the invitation.
That's wonderful. And tell us a little bit about again, this is the first time we've done it like this, but I wanted to do something differently here. I wanted people to, in their own words, to express what they want people to know about themselves. So that's what we're doing today. So kind of give us a snapshot on who Miss.
Absolutely. So, how would I describe myself? I think first and foremost, I'm an advocate. I am I hope to be a community leader. I'm early in my career as a couple and family therapist. I've always been interested in community mental health work because those are the people normally being served that, that have these free service options that normally wouldn't have access to mental health care. So that's my push, that's my purpose. And a lot of what drew me to UMD, I've only been at the university for a few short months since June, and working at the Center for Healthy Families as the clinical director there. And it's a training clinic attached to the Masters of Couple and Family Therapy program at UMD in the School of Public Health, which is very unique because I don't think people realize how much our relationships are a part of our health and our wellness.
Wow.
So I feel comfortable there. I feel excited about the work that I'm doing and that my students are doing and the rest of our colleagues, and happy to be here with y'all today.
Now,
Good, good.
Mayor Tierra is a brand new hire at
Mhm.
the University of Maryland. We didn't snap her. Let's give her some snaps now. Come on now.
If you're talking about an advocate for the advocate for the University of Maryland, you just out of here, man.
But I'm
But
just
we're
so
so
glad
Sure.
she's here
what
and
I'm
that she's
saying.
working on her PhD. But most importantly,
Fabulous.
she is hands-on with actual families that come in for therapy through our Center for Healthy Families. And I love that title, the Center for Healthy Families. So much of what
Right.
we do begins with a deficit.
Mhm.
And so you're in a sweet spot. Welcome aboard.
Thank
And
you.
what do we say? Go Terps.
Go Terps. That's right.
We are fearless.
You got it.
Exactly.
We're elated to have you, and so so happy to have this conversation on the cutting edge. Very important dialogue. Um, let's bring on because I want to get right into our conversation. Uh, uh, Reverend Rosalind Salmon, board certified chaplain and pastoral counselor. Again, a person that I was reacquainted with in the spirit today, but has such a wonderful spirit. The conversation commenced when we were preparing to come on the air, and just to know that someone who deals with this as a uh, chaplain or a reverend, that's the people who have to also minister to families. So, from her very practical space, we wanted to get her perspective on this. Let us bring up Reverend Chaplain Selman. Let's snap her
Come
up
on,
as she
snap
comes.
her up.
Yeah,
Snap her
thank
up.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, Mayor Neil. I am privileged to be here and I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here. When I think about my work, and particularly when I think about it in terms of chaplaincy, my primary role is to bring forth a kind of narrative that is healthy. And often in grief and in marginalized communities, um, with every possible variable that we deal with on a daily day basis, and particularly the Black community, often we run into narratives that simply aren't life giving. And so I enter into those spaces with a kind of culture of humility that understands that there are multiple things that are impacting how we make meaning out of life. And so as I journey with those families, I co journey to help them create their own narrative and not something that has been vetted in them, be I through religious institutions or social constructions, and kind of just sanctifying their human experience and letting them know that they can live and exist in their own narratives without judgment. And so it's an awesome opportunity to sit with families um, and affirm and validate um, how they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they are.
Reverend,
That's deep, Doc. You know that's deep, right?
very.
That
And,
real
and,
deep.
and it's the second time we've heard something. We've heard the word Black grief. We've heard now the word grief in marginalized communities. And I'm thinking, well, grief is grief. So when we say black grief or marginalized communities, I'm hoping I learned tonight why it's important that we make that distinction. Because a lot of people at the bedside don't look like us. You're saying this is something special about our community. Wow.
Absolutely.
It,
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
go
Please,
go
ma'am.
no. You continue because I don't want to get too far into the conversation now because I got something that I want to talk about that I go ahead. I want you to
Yeah.
uh,
And so grief is ambiguous, right? And so it is something that we all experience uniquely personal. And what makes that so personal is our cultural, our families, our
mhm.
religion, our social constructs, our neighborhoods, all of that. And so, yeah, Black grief is different, and it is something that I'm going after as a personal mission.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's powerful, um, and I like this concept of writing our own narrative,
Yes.
right? So critically important. So thank you so much, Reverend, what you do in your work. This is incredible, and this is a great show. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Wayman Scott, Associate Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He is, and again, one of the things that is important as we talk about this concept. All of these things are very critical as we look at how we uh, how do we fit in to the greater society? How are those issues of racism and those other things that marginalize and subjugate us? How do we process those things, and do they give us grief? Do they give us health issues just because of who we are? Those are the kinds of things that I wanted to talk to him about. Let's bring him up and talk to
Snap,
him.
snap, snap.
Man, what's going on? How you doing?
Mayor Omar Neal, I am grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Thomas. I am so grateful to be here. I am excited and humbled to spend time in space reflecting on grief, reflecting on what that means in the Black community. And coming out of the space as a former counselor, as a former chaplain, and now working as associate director for diversity, equity, and inclusion, I look at it in almost a macro scale. And there's really a question of access to care. There are resources for mental health. There are resources for healthcare. How are those resources allocated? And then how are people told about those resources? So
Right.
in a hospice, in any hospice around the country, that hospice is going to provide three things, right? That hospice is going to provide social workers and chaplains that are going to be there at the bedside, supporting the patient, the family, really introducing them to the space of mental health. Some families and people don't interact much with mental health providers
Hmm.
until they meet hospice providers. So, and number two, we provide the follow-up grief counseling. So you have these elements of support that are embedded in our community that are a Medicare benefit that we pay into with our taxes. How are we getting those out? So
Wow.
I'm very much of the mindset to think about there here in Baltimore City. There's a direct correlation between disparities of care and actual lifespan. So it's really important to work in a way.
Wow. That's
You know,
powerful.
Mayor,
Uh-huh.
I recently met Wayman in person outside of the Hollywood Squares. Let me just say something about this, bro. He's a disruptor.
Uh-oh.
He goes into organizations and changes things.
Right.
And he brought us into his space to help train staff, 200 people. And we brought this kind of cutting edge atmosphere into
Right.
that room, and they resonated with it, Mayor.
Yeah.
So when we heal the healers and have this conversation, Wayman's able to take that back to his staff, integrate it into what they're doing, truly transformational. Right, my own backyard, and I'm just learning about it. And these are things that we want to take across the country.
That's powerful. I want to get into this conversation. You know, there's a saying that I often, and that is, if you don't understand racism, then anything else you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. And so I want to go to Dr. Bourdieu and ask the question about generational trauma, that seeing your children taken from you, seeing people being killed because of some some violation of some whatever rule that was established during slavery or whatever it is, to see people being snatched from their country and go through the Middle Passage and die in the belly of boats and be there over periods of time. Can we transfer through DNA grief to generations? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Through epigenesis, we can do that. Really, trauma um, impacts the way our brains even process information, right? And the grief that follows or accompanies it. So yes, we absolutely can pass on intergenerational trauma in multiple ways, though. So in our bodies, in our DNA, um, in the decisions that our grandparents and great grandparents make about in terms of parenting. Their fears are transmitted to us. Their coping mechanisms are transmitted to us, um, and also their ability, their strategies for coping. So I always try to couple that with when I speak to populations and I talk about all of the complexities of grief and trauma, um, because they go hand in hand when we're talking about Black populations who were forcibly brought here to the United States. Um, we really have to be. We're always talking about both. We really aren't talking about. We're really talking about them singly, because with every trauma there is a loss. Um, Although not every single loss involves a trauma. But for Black populations, that is often the case. We take that trauma narrative. So I really appreciated what Dr. Rosalind mentioned, what Reverend Rosalind Selman, sorry, I'm combining these. I'm in Canada right now, by the way, at the International Work Group on Death and Dying. So yeah, trying to represent us. And so in any case, uh, providing a counter narrative can help with some of that. Like notions of being strong has both been a strength and a challenge in Black communities. Religion, the intergenerational transmission of religion that was, or religious and spiritual beliefs that serve to oppress Black people. So when we look at many of these, there are a lot of cultural conflicts and what can be passed on, and we can actually pass on trauma. We can also pass on beliefs that don't serve Black populations. If you're dealing with loss or grief, in my recent research with Black young adults, Black women, and looking at intersectionality really in their coping in college with various types of loss, both health related and violence related. Oftentimes they would talk about needing help, but really hiding it from their family members that they're trying to get counseling, or they're talking to peers, or they're talking to me even. As a researcher, due to stigma, they're told to pray. And so even those types of things can produce harm, right? How to balance strength with rest in the NAP ministry. And so also how to create a counter narrative to the one you've been given, right? How to engage in self-care and all of those kinds of things. So I just wanted to say that, a lot of the coping mechanisms that remain effective to the best of our abilities, but some of them don't serve us in the same way. And this newer generation they're responding and they're evolving in terms of culturally. Cultures evolve, and I'm seeing that in my research, in terms of trying to disrupt some of the cycles of disrupt some of the patterns that have been passed down that no longer serve, and probably have for a while not served or contributed to all of to chronic illnesses that we deal with in the Black community that
Yeah,
become the death of us.
one
Yeah.
example of one of those cycles to break. One example.
Rest.
Rest.
We need rest. So oppression counts on. And this is part of the challenge for Black populations and marginalized populations in general. Oppression relies on our fatigue,
Wow.
right? And so there's Black grief fatigue. There would be LGBTQ fatigue, and any group you want to name, Latino fatigue. And it's this constant cumulative losses that are disenfranchising and often sudden make it really challenging to cope with. Is particularly when you go into a store and you're also being followed. You get in your car and there's a loss of comfort and relaxation because you're driving. So this constant quest to prove yourself, to have to show your ID, I have college students who won't even tell their professors when they have a loss because they don't want to be stigmatized. So just this constant quest to be strong, to keep it together has helped us in some ways, right?
Yes.
Our
yes.
ability to regulate our emotions despite what they show despite how we're stereotyped on TV. But there is this quest to this fight for rest, because to not rest is killing us, and to find ways creatively to do that, and to find safe spaces to create safety and calm where it doesn't exist, and to have these intergenerational conversations when we look at grandma's way or grandpa's way of dealing with this. And what we're learning and what we're seeing and we're knowing, because Black female college students are among the top graduates of college around the US. So I just
Yes.
want to throw that shout out too. So knowledge is power. And we're seeing that, and it's like how to bridge these conversations so that we can continue to disrupt it, but also respect these intergenerational views about what is trauma. And also, this is one last thing I have to say. Also, you have to recognize that you've dealt with trauma, right? And so that's an issue too. That's a challenge too across the generations. If people don't call it trauma, we just call it that we're hungry or that we're tired. And when we start to use the word, no, I'm grieving. No, I'm tired. When we say those words, that's just the first step.
Wow.
So anyway, that's
Naming it matters.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, Reverend Selman, I want to take you down south, because when I would go to funerals, they would say that Christians don't grieve the way that other people grieve. There's a different understanding of life and death. And what I have also come to realize is that this generation is less churched than previous generations. So how does that comport? Because if they are not getting that kind of orientation, then how are they coping with grief if it's not like the churched people do?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I love it. One of so I'm currently getting my doctorate and my emphasis is the Black church response to grief. And that passage in Thessalonians, Christians don't grieve like others people grieve, is often how I start my grief sessions. Because we have to demolish this idea that Christians don't grieve, or even more importantly, that they shouldn't, because we have a hope, as that text continues to talk about. That's one of those generational things that we have to debunk, because this idea that grieving, which is a natural and a normal response to loss, is somehow contrary to being strong, is the wrong narrative, and a completely unhealthy narrative. And so many, even within our church structures, are grieving silently, because we do a great job about in a Christian terminology, we do a great job in praising Jesus, the
Mm-hmm.
divine, but
Mm-hmm.
we have very little conversation about the fully human part of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can kind of sanctify our human experience and validate that, yeah, it's okay, Christian, to grieve like other people grieve, then I think that we would cut into this kind of false existence, this strength that's not there, that being weak um, and being vulnerable is not necessarily a negative posture. That it's deeply human, and to be deeply human, um, is all right with me. And my motto is sanctify the human experience,
Yeah.
that we might walk in the authority and the power which we have.
Well, could you help me with this notion that somehow when people see violence daily, when they see it on social media, when they see it in the vicarious trauma that they are exposed to can lead to compassion fatigue,
Mm.
right? Right? That
Yeah.
that in order for me to survive, I can't care, right? I have to dismiss it, and I have to say I'm now concerned about me, my foe, and no more, right? So help me to understand, is that what we are experiencing in the Black community as a coping, as a mechanism for coping, is to detach ourselves and become less sensitive to what is happening around us.
Well, the first things first is Dr. Bordeaux brought up, the transmission of intergenerational trauma, what that is, what that looks like. I've been developing a training for clinicians specifically about how to work with African American families through that lens, and specifically our trauma of as Black people being descendants of slaves. And
Mm-hmm.
one part of my presentation that I talk about is that the way DSM defines trauma does not include the media that we're taking in. So it's not, and I think what we are all recognizing because of COVID, especially, is it doesn't have to be happening to you for it to affect you and for it to
Right.
be traumatic to you. And I do believe that some folks have developed this idea of, well, if I just disconnect, if I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
um, then that somehow makes it better. But overall, you can't ignore it. It's all around you. Whether if you log off social media, you can just go outside and see people doing things. Things are happening to folks every day. The compassion fatigue is real, but I don't think the detachment or our idea of detachment is actually something that's realistic, right? Like if you care about people, you're going to care about people. There's no switch to turn that off. And that's a gift that I'm personally grateful that I have, and I hope I never lose, because I think ultimately, especially when we're talking about grief and bereavement, I know for me, not just bringing my expertise, but my own personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
having my family, having that connection, knowing that people cared about me and how I was doing was a part of my healing experience, and it filled me up so that I could do that for others when it was time to oscillate that responsibility amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Scott, this notion that our children now are experiencing things that many of us were isolated from. We didn't have. In fact, the television went off at 12 o'clock. Dun, 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 dun. you know,
You're dating
you know,
yourself.
and then snow. I mean,
I
right
know. I
after that,
hear you.
right? Now we got, television 24/7. We have cell phones. People can access whatever they want 24/7. Our children can't shut it off like we could, or have those moments where we can rest from that
There you
kind
go.
of exposure, right?
Be still.
How are they processing this, and does it exacerbate their desensitization, or desensitivity towards life itself?
Mayor, you bring up a good point. There was a time when something like cyberbullying wasn't wasn't a thing. exist. So you have this whole other medium of communication. And when you look at millennials, when you look at Generation Z, these are what we call digital natives. So these are people or children that have grown up, and the idea of communicating over screen or social media is normal. But where do you find that balance? And research is showing that there is a correlational relationship between the age that a young person gets their first phone or mobile device and depression as a clinical diagnosis. So if that is exposed, if they're exposed too early, it could impact how they adjust later on in life, increase certain risk for mental health. Uh, so you want to be mindful of that, but at the same time, we can't just shut it off. That is now a legitimate medium of information. You're getting information on your phone. You're getting homework assignments, emailed to you, or on social media. So it's not something that we can just expect our young people to walk away from, but rather at home, if coping skills and techniques can be taught, really to manage and challenge that. We talk about residual or secondary trauma and grief. Yes, your phones are going to be exposed by that. The difference between the time period of the TV being in the living room, and there's that one family TV, and now is that parents, grandparents, aunts, caretakers, they're not able to curate, right, what their young person is looking at on the phone. Years ago, we know there was one TV in the house, maybe two if you were lucky, right? And if you're really
One
lucky,
one TV in the neighborhood.
there's well, that was a little bit.
You talk about you had one in the house, man. You were really you were you, you were you were that's high cotton there, brother.
Mayor and Wayman, stay there for a moment because, this distinction, I wanted to unpack, black grief, grief of marginalized group. Now grief with kids. There may be developmental dynamics as kids grow. But how about gender? Do men
Well,
and women grieve the same? I
Oh,
mean, physiologically, it's normal, but we're making these distinctions about marginalized groups, blacks. How about men and women?
I want to um, just share, especially in our community, when I was serving as a grief counselor, I would hear people um, bring up their faith as just like the Reverend here as a reason or tool not to grieve. I don't
Wow.
know why I'm crying. I shouldn't be sad. I don't need to have these feelings. And I remember then reminding people and sharing with fellow Christians that that shortest verse in the Bible when Jesus found out about his friend Lazarus died.
he he
Two
he
words.
wept, didn't he?
He wept.
Right.
And I think in the book of Matthew, when they were uh, the storm was on the sea, and the disciples were scared. Peter was dang near in tears. So there are strong emotions that happen. There are fears. There are tears. There are all these complex things, and there's nothing really empty faith about them, but it's our perception. And when you look at men and women, it's really like how open are we, right? This idea of this stoicism that men have to be a certain way, or men can't cry, right? And
Right.
that's what I ran into sometimes as well. And oftentimes spending my time affirming people's emotions. Oh, yes, men can cry because men are human and have emotion and have pain and have love, the whole spectrum, right? And the, everyone is unique to themselves, but yes.
That's a powerful question because I was told that boys were rags and snails and puppy dog tails, where girls were sugar and spice and everything nice.
There
And
you
then
go.
when a little boy get hurt, get up. Little boys don't cry. But little girl, you hug her, come here, sweetie, and kiss it and all of that, right? And that we begin to orientate young men not to be in touch with their emotions, right? Very early. we call when little boys get to be a certain age, 5 and 6, they're my little man, right? And so we force him into an area that he's not ready for, whether or not wittingly or unwittingly, whether or not conscious or unconscious. We are forcing young men to be in spaces that they're not emotionally developed to handle, right? Uh, Dr. Bordier, is that hyperbolic, or is that possible?
And just to clarify your question, is it possible that we can undo that, or is this
No, no, no.
happening
It's
that
possible
we
that's
can undo?
happening. I just
Oh
want to
yeah,
know.
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
I need an amen. I mean,
Amen and hallelujah.
Reverend
Yes.
Reverend Selman
Yes
is
and
not the only
hallelujah.
one that got to ask for amen. If I
Yes.
can ask
Oh
for
no,
amen too.
it's happening. You need
Okay.
snaps and like all of it, like 5 or 12 reactions, like my sister mentioned, Tierra Fennell. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the messages that our children get. Boys in particular are encouraged to follow the boy code. They're discouraged from extending their emotional vocabulary, from the modeling that they get. So like, all of the all of the things you just mentioned, right? So what we also know though is that uh, the research is that Black kids, and here we come back to this, and we coming back to Black grief. Through research or a series of studies of Black kids and interactions with law enforcement, we know research has found that when Black kids are viewed or adultified in a broader society, they start to lose protection earlier than other kids. So they
Wow.
lose police protection that should have allowed them to be able to the freedom to express emotions and just to be and live their childhood and access a variety of emotions. They are expected to grow up. They are viewed as miniature adults. For boys, by the time for many kids, they are viewed as Black kids are viewed as much older and much more mature than what they are. When Tamir Rice died, um, and the officer called in his death, and you'd have to really dig deep. I study homicide laws, and so I tend to go into every record I can find. But when the officer called in the death of this 12-year-old, he described him as an 18 to 21-year-old who he had just killed within 2 seconds of exiting his vehicle while his kid was playing with the toy at a park. So the differential expectations these expectations are real. We see it in schools too, that might inhibit emotional expressiveness, where Black kids, Black male youth especially, are put in special education classes by third grade at a disproportionate rate. So this whole notion of being able to access your emotions can be really challenging for both males and females. But again, males are in a society where it's to be more masculine to express what you're feeling. Definitely, men and women can express grief in very similar ways and in very different ways. Grief really varies from person to person based on all of your different beliefs. But I can tell you this, that when I sit in across or next to any of the Black youth I've spoken with, and that most of my work has been with Black teenage males, I can tell you that they've experienced what DOCA would call disenfranchised grief. So Lil Wayne, I like to bring that up because Lil Wayne is from New Orleans, from my city, and Lil Wayne has said, give me a canvas and I'll draw you a picture, right? So give me some space and I'll tell you how I feel. But they have been inhibited. They've been prevented from sharing these. When I sit across in my research from Black teenage males, and I followed some from the time they were 12 to 22 and 23, and they often say, you're the first person who asked me how I felt. And many grieving people feel like that. You are literally the first person who has asked me how I feel. So they're much more likely to experience unacknowledged grief because we're dehumanized at baseline. And then you add on to that suffocated grief, a concept that I developed through my research that um, through with Black youth and other youth representing multiple identities that have been marginalized. They don't is that they're much more likely to be punished for normal grief expressions.
Punished.
So we can't even be punished, like penalized in schools. So normal grief
Stop crying. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Stop
Well,
crying.
not even that. Behavior. There's yeah. So that's like gentle, to tell you the truth, Mayor Neil.
Wow.
Yeah.
They have suffocated grief, and I hope we use that, not just because it's my research.
Oh, I
but
love.
because
I can
Right.
see it. That's
Yeah.
putting it where the cows can get it.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
Yeah, but
I
it's the penalties that we pay. So our grief, when people don't acknowledge your feelings and validate your story, that's one thing. You might be angry, upset, your feelings are hurt, but when you get penalized for those, we saw it in the march in protest when Black people have been sprayed with hoses for a behavioral expression of grief, compared to January 6th, where the
Yes.
police were like. We also see it in classrooms. Black youth are dealing with tremendous amounts of grief, trauma, vicarious trauma, historical trauma, and bringing all of that into the classroom space, represented largely by a white population of educators, and sometimes burnt out Black educators, and are much more likely their behaviors because Black youth are stigmatized and stereotyped. Their normal expressions of tears, more frequently fatigue, being triggered by bells and things like that, and their reactions to that have been penalized, from being put in special education classes to the differential suspension and expulsion rates nationwide, to being arrested and at worst being killed, right, for your normal expression of grief, whether it's cognitive expression, social expression, emotional expression. And so that was that. That's it. So being a cost associated with your grief when you're dehumanized is really a big thing, and it's hurt our people across genders and sexualities and things like that, and it definitely disproportionately impacts um, uh, populations that have been marginalized. Because I hate to just say marginalized population, we've been marginalized.
Right.
We exist at the margins, not because we chose that, but because it's been imposed, like so many other things. So I just thank you.
Every human being in the world need to hear you, Doctor.
All of us. This is a phenomenal. I want to be friends after this with Reverend Selman and Karen and Scott.
We are friends. We're
And
family.
you and I'm sitting with the mayor
Absolutely.
and
this is
Dr.
one of-
Thomas. Come on, come on.
Let me say this. One is a couple things I want to do. One is I want to get a pulse of how we feel collectively. Go through this. So, Dr. T, if you could tee up our word cloud, then I want to go to Reverend Selman to talk about how it is perceived in Black crazy, and people feel they will, if they go seek help in employment, in socialization with other people, in relationships, whether or not it's family relationships or relationship with girlfriend, boyfriends. I mean, when you seek, people literally feel so they suppress, right? Whatever they're experiencing, hopefully that they can sleep through it or whatever, they can go through it and kind of medicate themselves. And I think that may lead to a lot of drug addiction, is that they're trying to suppress the pain, right, that they are experiencing without any assistance clinically and otherwise. So what I want to do, Dr. T, tee it up. I've already given you the question. I hope you can remember it, because I won't. Go ahead, Dr. T.
I just want you to think right now, at the moment we're in, both in the country and in this post-pandemic period that is now the new normal, where I now know more people with COVID than I did during the peak. Okay? What word comes to mind for you right now? And for the next 60 seconds, drop that word in the chat, and then drop as many words as you can think of in that chat. For those of you out in cyberspace and social media land, you can use your Q&A box or your and drop those words in for the next 60 seconds. Just keep them coming. Don't worry about
spelling.
Just keep
Don't
the
worry about
words
anything.
coming,
Yeah.
and the crew behind the scenes is going to build a cloud. And the more people who say that word, the larger that word will be. For the past 3 years, we have done this exercise with every group that we've met with. It's an amazing thumbnail it's a real pulse beat.
Mm.
When we bring it back up for you to see it, we're going to unpack it together. We're going to put a and so I'm sitting here listening to this conversation, and I'm saying to myself, if many of the providers that are out there don't come from our experience, what's going on in their classrooms to get them ready, given that all the things we've just said? Now, I would like to believe that a well-trained person, be regardless of their race, ethnicity, or gender identity, if they're trained well, can do what they need to do to help me and my family grieve or bereave, whatever it is that you do as experts, they could do that even though they don't look like me or come from my experience. Am I being naive to think that?
Well, let me say this. You know what implicit bias is, Doc, don't you, Doc? So it doesn't mean that they don't want to. It's because they have been acculturated to see you the same way that others see you, even those well-intended people. They have views of black people and how we respond to our own grief as well. I, it's a difficult thing, but I wanted to make sure that we raise your question along with my question. And I want to give it to Reverend Salmon, whether or not people uh, look at mental health indifferently in black communities, and we don't seek mental health. And then let's add in what Dr. T said in terms of people who are teaching and interacting with our people and professionally. Are they getting the kind of um, orientation necessary to be responsive to where we are as a people?
Well, let me talk about the in a prerequisite that I'm not a mental health professional, but I do see in my encounters that mental health and has been for generations been stigmatized in the Black community. And I think that that's a part of the narrative of being strong. Many of us might remember this in the households from generations. What goes on this house stays in this house, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of
Right.
shame that's
Right.
attached to mental illness that's been generationally embedded, particularly in the Black community. One of the things that we try to do with an organization at Greater Baltimore Medical Center is to address that mental illness is simply that, right? And the narrative that you attach to it has often been embedded and taught either from a negative social construction or family, but mental illness is simply an illness. It does need to be addressed, and it does need to be humanized, and the stigma does need to be erased within the Black community. That's very, very deep issue, and particularly when we talk about grief. Do other circles, institutions, disciplines outside of the Black community from different cultures understand us to the level where they can sit with empathy? I hate to make a large generalization that that's impossible. I do think, however, in my humble opinion, that empathy and really being able to sit with you and understand cultural relevance is important.
Okay.
Y'all know I
Cultural
have a lot
relevance
of thoughts
matters.
about both of those questions.
That's deep. So what you say, Ms. Fennell?
I said I have a lot of thoughts about both of those questions.
Well,
but
let unload. I mean,
Yeah,
let's
yeah. You got the floor.
now what you all need to realize, you all know if
We in the barbershop.
you know where we
Please
are,
go
right?
on.
Right? Let's
I
have this
do.
conversation. You don't have to even wait for me to ask the question. Mr. Scott, chime in. I mean, this kind of conversation. We're in the barbershops. We're in the hair salons right now, right? That's
Yeah.
what we're doing. So come on with it. Let's go. Go ahead,
Okay, Tara.
Miss Fennell.
You know, the first thing I'll say in terms of the stigma, the taboo of mental health in the Black community is definitely real. I know for me, being a clinician, we're something called mandated reporters. There's different types, whether you're working in the hospital, if you're a teacher, we are required by law in order to maintain our jobs and our licenses to report certain things to, child protective services, to the police, etc. I have a lot of conflict about that. So I completely understand how and why, my cousin up the street may not be comfortable going to someone who is mandated by law to share
Wow.
and
Wow. Right.
extend
Right.
past the help they were looking for, and sometimes be interference with other systems that don't mean them the same level of support and love and nurturing that I do have to become involved. So that's number one. I think the other piece is that all of us as people, but certainly as Black people, because of our lived experiences and this intergenerational transmission of trauma, I think we all believe and we forget that feelings are fleeting. In those moments when these major life events are happening, it feels like this is going to be how I'm going to feel forever, right? It's never going to shift. It's never going to change. And I think a lot of fear is wrapped up in what if I can't get past this? What if I can't move past this? And how I've tried to orient that with my clients when I've worked with African Americans in particular is like, your feelings are data. They are fleeting. They're going to change constantly. There might be one that is persistent. Grief is persistent. But even it will show itself differently. It presents differently. There's ebbs and flows. You're angry. You accept. You go back to anger again. You question. That is a part of what it means to be a human and have a human experience. Knowing that we are probably one of the most inconsistent beings on this earth, right? If we're going off of how we feel all the time. So I think that for me, that offers me a lot of comfort. I might not feel great right now, but I know this too shall pass. And that's also in the good word. All right.
Thank
Right.
you.
But in regards to training,
Amen.
come on.
Right.
I'll
In
give
regards,
you an amen. I'll give you an amen on
I
that.
appreciate
Go
it.
ahead. Go ahead.
In regards to training, I know speaking for the program I work for, that is a part of, for one, the university, the institution that we operate within. They have a statement about diversity, honoring the land that all of our institutions live on, Native American land that didn't belong to us. It was stolen, right?
Mhm.
Recognizing and understanding that history and doing what it can to commit to developing people and professionals who are aware of who they are, where their
Mhm.
what their social location means when people see them, regardless of what their intent is. Them being able to recognize in other people, whether you're in that group or not, how we're different, how we are the same, and being able to hold both of those spaces. And I know for me, with the students that I work with, it's a constant conversation. This is work that has to happen once you leave here as well. This is built into your curriculum, so you can't avoid it. I think a lot of what I have seen is that people, when they fall out of the academic or training institution, you kind of get into your rhythm and you forget that you have to do that level of work. And that work isn't just for you. If you are someone who is people facing and being a part of people's very intimate and private and vulnerable lives and experiences. Um, so for me, I hold it as a responsibility. I hope that I'm indoctrinating my students to recognize the graveness of that responsibility as well, not just for them, but for all the people they'll come in contact with and the people they'll teach, the people they'll develop to send out into the world to be clinicians or to just be people, right? And as I think that's a responsibility we all need to take on.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to bring up Dr. Ritter, and then Gordon need you to. But let's look at this. Do you all
Wow.
see the largest word in the center? Uh, what is that, Dr. Bourdieu?
What do you see,
Hopeful.
Dr. Bourdieu?
It's hopeful,
Hopeful.
right?
Look at that.
And that's what we're talking about. It's hopeful, right? And in that, what faith is, uh, Reverend Selman, in that, what faith is, the substance of things hoped for,
Cool. And the
and
evidence of
evidence
things
not seen,
not
right?
seen.
Right. So
Yes.
as long as we can, as in the words of Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive,
There you go.
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Then we know these too shall pass. Reverend Fennell, right? Right. We know, and I'm calling you Reverend, for because you bootleg and you didn't need your you need your license, you know. But if you look at it, we have to remain hopeful.
Yes.
We do.
That's what this is about. This too shall pass, and we have to love on each other. We have to love each other through this. We're looking at suicide at the highest rates. They're recorded now, but people don't talk about it. They talk about homicide, but suicide is double that of homicide in this country.
And I think that in the midst of this, we have to have hope, but we also need to be pragmatic. And just to piggyback off of one of the earlier questions about serving in Black communities, serving Black and Brown people, it's important for healthcare institutions to do their research and train their people. So I'm a director of diversity for Gilchrist and associate director for GBMC. And we make it mandatory. You're going to be patient facing. If you're going to be dealing with people's mothers, fathers, aunts,
Mm-hmm.
children,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you need to be trained, right? So if I'm going to send my family to a healthcare institution, are they trained to have cultural sensitivity and provide empathy in a culturally sensitive way? That's important. And then at Gilchrist, what we do, we actually go into communities, we go into churches, community centers, neighborhoods, and we will have focus groups and we will have listening sessions to understand what are the barriers to
Right.
hospice care for Black families. What are the barriers to primary care for Black families? How do we address that? So you can look at the metadata, but it's important for healthcare institutions to just continue to get on the ball and find out what the needs are. And going to the community and talking to them is paramount.
Man,
And if
wherever
I
you
might
are, they are
interject one thing.
blessed to have you. I'm letting you know that to you, Mr. Scott, Dr. Bordier.
I just have one quick thing. You know, in addition to the stigma, it's also if you can even find. So we know that many
Oh, yeah.
therapists or clinicians are not trained in race-based trauma. That's just at baseline.
Would
So
you
a lot
say
of my
that
work is
again? Would
doing
you
that,
just say
right?
that again? Would you just say that again? Because that just resonated so powerfully.
Yeah.
Please say that again.
Research indicates that they're particularly they looked at newer clinicians, right, and found that they were not trained in race-based trauma. So we can just imagine or surmise the generations before them, right? The people who are already who are currently in practice. So that's one barrier in and of itself. Okay, they come to you, and then therapists reported that they actually don't know what to do. Now, another thing is through research we found that actually Black people are seeking therapy at higher rates, and Black women in particular are seeking therapy at higher rates. They are also much more likely to terminate early from therapy because it's not culturally resonant for them. So we're wanting to go. Now here's the other pieces when we get in. So in research that's been done that looked at a Black sounding name, right, and a white sounding name, and that utilize the Black sounding voice, whatever that means, right, and a white sounding voice. If we're honest, we know what those are. You can probably imagine. They found that clinicians, and they randomly called clinicians, they found that, and this was a study of white clinicians in particular, and there are allies out there, and I always want to say that there are allies in every group, and every group progresses because of allyship of populations, people who advocate and will step up for you and speak up when you're not in the room and use their privilege to support you. However, what they found was that these therapists, although Black and white fictitious people, were likely to receive return calls for appointments at similar rates. White populations, or the white sounding name and voice, was more likely to actually be given an appointment. So the callback versus calling back and giving you an appointment and trying to move the process forward is challenging. So the barriers are numerous as we look at this. As we look at this situation, just before you even get in the door, we have all of these things. You have that Black person who's having to overcome the stigma, have to go, but even if grandma is saying it's not going to be worthwhile. And then also the reality is that when Black people have talked about their kids and tried to get them help, they end up over medicating. Black kids are over medicated
Right.
for grief and everything else. And then another thing and we already talked about suffocated grief. And then this other piece where Black kids are disproportionately taken from their home in this capitalistic society and put into foster care and other systems. And so there is a real threat. So some things there's stigma, but underneath a lot of that is like, there are real threats. And this is the last thing I want to come to, Mayor Neil, because you brought this up.
Yeah.
You brought this up, and so
Yeah,
did you,
yeah.
Dr. T. So
Blame me. I'll take it. Go ahead.
You brought this up, so I want to say one other thing. Historically, when we look at just this desire, this lack of space for Black people to express this hardness that we have to carry around, this strength, this emotional this extra work we have to do. During when Black people were enslaved, they dealt with multiple losses all the time, multiple sudden disenfranchising losses hung from tree. You know this, we don't have to go through it, but we've had some horrific deaths throughout history. But when you had to keep working, you could not grieve even then. You couldn't have moments to sit down. Grief is a luxury. So you actually, for your protection, had to keep working, or you were going to deal with additional consequences, that suffocated grief, being beaten or killed, or raped, whatever it was, right? So that is something that has historically been a protective factor. And so when we look at it, that's where we come with the compassion and why we're in these spaces, and why I said I have to get out of here, because we deserve other modes. We deserve therapists who are going to meet us where we are, to give us opportunities to use art and creativity. When I work with kids, y'all, I make sure that it's palatable for them. Like, you want to go play basketball? Let's do it. You want to do art? Let's do it. You want to sing? Let's do it. You want to write a prose piece? Let's do it. And so we're so creative.
Right.
Because all of these experiences, we have so much to draw from. So I just wanted to say, getting in the door is the challenge. Worried about what's going to happen to your kid when you get in there. Will your family be broken up just like we have historically in this capitalistic society? And then what are you going to do when we get in there? Are you even displaying? I have to give two hopeful notes. One is emphatic effort does help. And I've also come up with the 5 A's of culturally conscientious practice. Like, you mess up, apologize, acknowledge your error, ask questions, ally. Those are the ways you can be more effective with us, because I don't want to leave us with no way to be effective. And the other piece is emphatic effort and ability to not allow these preconceptions to color your time with the population, right? Not allowing that. So humility is when we bracket what we think before we enter the space, so we can be present. Like, write in your journal before you go into that room with all your stereotypes. It's going to allow you to be more present. So cultural humility. So I always just, there are things that can be done, even if they're one at a time. But people can have success in racially dissimilar situations if there is at least emphatic effort, if we're willing to apologize, if we can acknowledge we're burned out as a Black person dealing with trauma, or white, whatever your background is. So it's just, these things are possible. But
Dr. Roedier, I mean, you mentioned allies, and you just gave a master class in what needs to be done, and talked about clinicians. So we have our resident gynecologist with us, Dr. Ritter, who sees patients, including Black women. And when people have trust, and I'm asking you this, Dr. Ritter, you're not a psychiatrist. You're not just like the barbers and stylists. They're not psychologists or psychiatrists, but people come to them, and what they say and how they treat them can be healing. So I'm just curious what you're hearing, Dr. Ritter, in this conversation.
Oh, wow. It's a wealth of wisdom. that I'm hearing. And respond to all of it. As a white clinician, um, we're not trained in race-based trauma. We're not because if we focused on that, we'd realize medicine is a big trigger of trauma for race. We'd have to admit that there's racism in healthcare, and then maybe we could be trained in it. I mean, we try to admit it, but then we still don't do anything. We just say it in words. But what I'm experiencing is the rest, the need for rest. What did you say? The fight for rest. Oh my gosh. That is really what we need to. Everybody knows the book The Body Keeps the Score, right? Because we are conditioned. We're just a body full of conditioned experiences. And a lot of the trauma that we have been forced to cover up as minorities, as women, I have that myself. It never leaves. So until you can do the internal work in community together, like that word cloud, we had so many individual words. We have to do the individual work and then come into a space to rest like this. So this space I've been in for 3 years or so now with you guys, and it just opens up the restful space that you can have this communication and heal. So I try in my individual practice to give the space to the patient. It's easier when you know the patient for a long time, but so many come in first time, and I try not to talk as much. You give leading open questions and then give the space. So it's been interesting during the pandemic because people are willing to talk more because we have this common trauma of a pandemic. We can enter race spaces better when we have a common trauma. So that's what I'm recognizing with my patients. They're opening up to me. I've changed myself, but I don't think I've changed that much, but they have changed in their reaction to me. So it's possible. It is hopeful that we can train clinicians in race-based trauma. It's there.
So we have a topic, a heavy topic that generates hopefulness, a heavy topic that this space feels like I can rest here.
Yeah.
Because
It's
I can
the
express my
Trusted
whole self.
Information Center, right?
Wow.
This is where we have a Trusted Information Center, where we are in a space where people really are seeking truth, right? And if you're in a place where people genuinely want to know the truth, then that's a safe space, because you are allowed to give your truth, to share your truth, believing that we're all possessors of some truth, and as we bring our truths together, then and only then do we get closer to the truth, right? So if you allow me to tell my truth, no matter how I feel, right, just allow me to have that space, and we can all learn from each other. Thank you, Dr. Ritter, for sharing your truth. Let me. We got. Do you know we have 8 minutes left?
Can't
man?
believe
This is
it.
incredible. And it's incredible. We have
Another new person. to bring up.
Donna Bruce and then Javon Gordon. You up next? So in fact, bring them up both.
And-
Yeah,
Donna,
go ahead.
Use your screen and pull it down. You got a lot of head space, so we can see you there. You can bring it down a little bit more.
Donna,
There you go. There you go.
there you go. Okay.
Unmute yourself. Tell us who you are.
Hey everyone,
Hey,
how's everybody?
Hey, Mr. Gordon, how you doing, man? It was
I'm
great
good.
talking to you earlier today, man. You're an incredible young man. It's good. Tell the people who you are, and then let's get into this conversation.
Well, I can. Unless Miss Bruce goes first.
That'd be rude of you. Okay.
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me into this space. Hey, Carol, Dr. Ritter, I feel so empowered. Thank you so much. So we have 8 minutes, so I'm going to be very short. So my name is Donna Bruce, Donna Bruce Unlimited. I'm a hairstylist. I am a healer. Hey, Wayman, nice working with you here in Baltimore. And Dr. Bordu, what you were saying with the healing through art, I'm so excited. I'm trying to articulate it. I'm thinking about time. So, for all intents purposes, I am a bereaved mother. That's my son, Devon.
Wow.
2 years ago, he was found unresponsive here in Baltimore. That's a whole nother story because they determined it. They couldn't give me a diagnosis how he passed. That's a whole nother story. But in his transition, I'm a hairstylist. I am artsy. I'm creative. I dance. I do hair. Um, I started doing these hair and fashion shows honoring other bereaved mothers. That has been so much healing for me that I can't even articulate what it's doing.
Mhm.
So, in my pouring into other mothers, just creating this space for them to put on clothes and walk down the runway and come to rehearsal other people who are hurting and grieving because what happens is people forget people grieving.
Mm.
So all the phone calls die, the flowers die, and through my son's transition, I've just been able to pour into 19 is the second annual DBU annual fashion show honoring.
You muted yourself, Donna.
Donna, you muted
Yeah.
yourself. I'm sorry.
Sorry, November the 19th is the next DBU honoring bereaved parents because what the men said was, Donna, nobody never asks about us. When are you going to honor the men? And I said, we're going to honor the men next year. And then I had some LGBTQ said, well, Donna, what about us? And I
All
said,
right.
guess what? It's room for everybody,
There
right?
you
So
go.
Right.
I say all that to say that healing happens in untraditional ways and untraditional spaces. I don't know all the technical terms, but as you all were sharing, I was like, this is some clinical work that's going on here. Like we are healing in untraditional ways, right?
That's right.
Um, so I I invite all of you to come to the show. Javon, it's your turn. I think you got like 3 minutes.
Okay.
No,
Not all three, but
Not all
go ahead.
three.
no. I want everybody to stay there because
That's right.
this is really good. Go ahead, Jim.
No, I
Thank
really,
you so much, Donna, for
Thank you, Donna.
sharing. Absolutely.
yeah, no,
Go
I
ahead.
really appreciate your transparency, Miss Donna. That was just excellent. That was just a perfect segue for me to be able to just talk about so many different things. Because you're right, the great doctor here did speak on so many high level principles and things that we need to look at. But one of the things I want to talk about is systems and culture. And uh, Mr. Scott said, they have, all these systems and things out there that meet our needs. And I think that's good. But I don't believe that the systems are built around our culture. And if the systems aren't built around our culture, our people are going to continue to just buck against the system or just not utilize the system for what it could be used for. And I'm finding that with youth, and we spoke on it earlier. If all these resources are there, we got all you great people are there, we got churches, we got all these spaces for safe spaces, but if the information isn't there and it's not safe, it's not welcoming, it's not a real system for our culture. That's why I love this platform, because if we could design a system where we stop navigating the therapist to school or this information through or the degree spaces through this therapist within the colleges, maybe my local barber just wants to be a therapist, a community support worker, or a coach. Why can't we incentivize them? So I'm just looking at ways that we can just fit our systems into our cultures, our cultures, our systems, to make a better living space for all. That's what I'm here for.
I like that. Yvonne and I met with a group of HHS leaders focused on how we can help Black men. Closed door session. And these poles back here, I see simply as a new doorway. And on the other side of the doorway, because no one feels bad going into the barbershop, they all feel good coming out of the salon. But Dr. Bordu, imagine you walk through these bars, and on the other side is you, or someone that you've trained.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where we're trying to get to, a new doorway for healthcare for our community.
Yeah,
And,
I want you.
and as a hairstylist, sorry.
No, go ahead. No,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
And,
go ahead.
and as a hairstylist, I can attest to just literally tonight, my client is going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Something as simple as doing her lashes and her eyebrows. She
Yeah.
cried and had to do her lashes over again. And then I had to decompartmentalize my divorce that I talking about vicarious trauma now,
I'm
right?
with it.
So
Right.
learning
with it.
all these coping skills and then
Right.
say, okay, now I have to prepare myself to go fix dinner for my new husband. But I had to think about my old husband, but I had to be there to help her heal in this process. So
Right.
people minimize or look over the significance that barbers and stylists have. Under the direct training, I'm a certified life coach. I'm a certified peer recovery specialist with a specialization in family as well as a registered peer supervisor, a master cosmetologist. So I wear many hats. But under the right, and I got so hungry and filled up when you guys were just pouring all this information because it all makes sense. So if you train us thoroughly,
'Cause it-
we are boots on the ground,
There you go.
then we can
Yeah.
train the younger people because we can
That's
connect
what
through
I
hair
was.
shows and fashion shows,
There you
right?
go.
That's what,
So
and I'll land the plane on that, and because that's what we're the base of our conversation is finding ways that we can really incentivize youth. Imagine a 10-year-old that's doing her baby doll's hair, knowing that I can grow up to be the therapist and the cosmetologist out of high school, making six figures right away. That's a career
yes,
path for me,
yep.
and I can
And
go to
that's what we do. And that's what we actually do at the organization. So the website is there. We had like over 25 young people with all these mannequins, and they are in tune. But you also got to learn something trauma informed. So
There you
so
go.
that's the trick is I'll bring you all you young ladies in, but we're gonna learn a little bit about sensitivity, that how to speak to your sister if she's not braiding correctly. Okay, I'm done.
No,
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 I'm
Just
you know, I
beginning,
didn't think
Donna.
about it. You know, we started a little late, so that's gonna give us a few more minutes. Let's bring up a couple of people. Let's go down the Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We're gonna be short on this, but we do want to introduce
Thank you, Javon.
our wellness warriors.
Yeah, the
to,
wellness warriors out
you
there.
know, we need to do that. Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Hey,
Dorothy Reynolds, how you doing?
Good evening. I'm fine. Thank you for this opportunity to even say something. And thank both of you, Dr. Thomas and Mary Neal, for this particular topic. We're experiencing so much death in Pine Bluff. And it's the topic, the message, the information from our panelists is helpful to me. And because I've been dealing with some of these I lost my neighbor across the street just yesterday.
Wow.
But in our shops, we have to deal with death, romantic loss, which is grieving, when a person loses a mate to whatever infidelity, when parents lose their children because they come out of the closet, they are no more the person they thought they were. All of that come to us in the shop. And so this session tonight is really helpful to us because no matter what, we're going to have to either pray with them, cry with them,
That's right.
stroke their shoulders, make them feel better than they felt when they came into our shops, into our salon or barber shop. So we have to be prepared also. So this information tonight is really preparedness.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the topic. And
Absolutely.
thank you all.
All
Thank you so
right.
much. We love you so much.
Dorothy Reynolds,
Miss
Pine Bluff,
Reynolds. Good
Arkansas.
Pine Bluff,
And
Arkansas.
actually, I was born in Louisiana.
Uh-oh, there we go.
Dr.
I
Bodier,
knew you
see?
were all right. I knew you were all right.
The hairdo
Everybody
is
on here is
fire. I was
amazing.
peeping the hairdo the whole time. I kind of knew you was a hairstylist. The hair was fire the whole time I was watching. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Michelle Lamb. Let's go up to Cincinnati, Ohio, and hey, Miss Lamb, I hadn't seen you since the last time I saw you.
Snap
Right?
her up. And Omar, call another barber up. Let's get two at
Okay,
a time.
okay.
Bring
Let's
Andre up.
go down to Andre to Atlanta, Georgia. Bring him up, and who else do we have that's on in the wing?
Dynamite
Mike
Brown.
Mike Dynamite Brown. Bring him up. Let's we're gonna bring everybody up as we go now. Let's go with you, Michelle. How you doing, sweetie?
I'm doing great. How are you? How are
Oh,
all of you
wonderful.
guys?
Doing
This
great.
this conversation tonight. I'm Michelle Lamb. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a barber stylist, and I own a barber shop here in the airport here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And what I wanted to say tonight is this touched me in so many ways. One, because I host a grieving and compassionate friends once a month at a funeral home. So, I mean, I'm so glad I was here tonight. Okay. And basically, I sit in on their conversations when they have it. So, this is like great. And then I'm taking a coping class this month, the whole month of October. So, this is so informational for me. And it's so on target because this is what I'm doing now.
Wow.
And I just want to say thank you guys for all the information.
Thank you so very
Thank
much
you,
for
Michelle
what
Lamb.
you're doing.
We're
Absolutely.
building
Good to see you.
capacity in the community that stays in the community.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Let's go to the ATL in the
Atlanta.
airport of the ATL.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
My name is
evening.
Andre Russell. I happen to have a shop in the busiest airport in the world, and I'm required to say that every time I introduce myself. So, but to the subject we're talking about, the grief, I've got four sons, two masters, one PhD, and then another guy that's like me that opens up businesses. When we talk about grief, we talk more about, and when I'm talking about grief, I want to keep it in sort of black grief. I'm talking about black life. And so I encourage my sons to initiate things that is happening with them when we talk about grief, because in our lives, in particular, there has been a tremendous amount of grief. And what I try and tell them is when we approach situations where there are police involved, we have a shield of intelligence based on some of the things that we've talked about. Dr. Bordeaux has talked about. We need to talk about these things within our groups, within our lives, within our families. Because grief is going to be with us as Black individuals, regardless. It's once we talk about grief, as we do, then religion comes up, because the more my boys learn, the more they go into, well, what's happening with religion. I can't say anything in particular because we all have individual things going on. But however, this has been very good for us. I'm going to try and get them to watch this, but they are extreme individuals, doing everything that they do. One of them, I think, is following behind what Dr. Bordeaux is talking about what's happening with Black grieving. And most of the time, they only come by on Sundays when we have dinner. And most of the time, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. I just want to say that. So
You love them anyway.
Well, thank you, man. We love you. We love you, man. Thank you so much. Let's go to Mike Dynamite Brown.
There
Let's
you
go.
go.
Let's
What's
go
up,
up to the
everybody?
DC area. Go ahead, man. What's going on, man?
Hey, man, Nia, how y'all doing?
Doing
Um,
great, man.
this was very informative today. I was just listening. I don't even want to step into this. I don't even want to open this can because the day that I had fits right into this. I kind of like diffused the war that was about to start in the barbershop, and it started on Instagram. I don't even want to go into it, but
Hey,
today
well,
was so
give me the
informative.
snippet. Would you just
Get the skinny.
why you gonna bring it up and then say I don't want to talk about it, right?
So,
You at least give
I
us a
mean,
snippet, right?
to
it
use
like
those seconds
fell
to talk about it. Oh, sorry.
in my lap, and we're talking about the young guys out here that's walking around with ski masks on and their pants hanging off their butt. So I'm cutting one of them, and he comes in the shop, and I started to cut them, and then I stopped to do something. When I turned around, some guys came in. They had on ski masks. I was like, what's going on? What's up? They was like, nah, we need to talk to him. And I was like, let's talk and see what's going on. So I talked to them outside. I was like, you can't do that here. So I let the two guys go in the back who had an altercation and left all the other wolves outside. I let them talk in the back, and it all started over Instagram about who said what. And then he said, when I see you, I'm gonna see you when I see you. So he saw him in the barbershop, but his whole demeanor was different when he saw the guy. So it's just going back to the mental trauma that's in our community, that when you bump into somebody because you're talking tough on the internet, and then when you see him, your whole demeanor is different. I mean, that altercation landed right in front of me, and it could have blew up right there had I not been there, because the guys that were coming to do something, they called me uncle. Hey, we ain't gonna do that to you, uncle. No, so just to be in that environment, to defuse that and let the two guys talk was a healing mechanism for me. So it didn't turn out to where they were trying to kill each other. They left out talking, and that was big for me. But
way to go,
things that
Mike.
was going on and being said today, it really it was a confirmation that, I need some more training on coping mechanisms and stuff like that, because a lot of this stuff I really just don't tolerate. I don't understand it. I mean, how can people be dead wrong about something and then act like they right? They want to fight you like they're right. I mean, I just don't get the way the world thinks, and I'm not really empathetic towards it, because these are the same guys that'll go out there and be shooting at somebody and shoot one of my kids, and they ain't done nothing. So I don't have no empathy for people who do these type of things, and they just acting because they want to act like that. Maybe I need some more training, because
Well,
I
you
don't understand.
you do know that hurt people, right? And oftentimes I think sometimes we forget these guys that act like they big and bad and all of that. These are people who are hurt but don't know how to express it, so they transfer their pain onto other people, right? And so, but this is something, that's why, Mike, that's why we do what we do here, right? So we can talk it out, and I can understand how you can feel, because your children, your sons and daughters can be out here as well and be a victim of something that they have nothing to do with, because somebody is hurt and want to
I don't
vent
makes me want to cry
their,
thinking about that.
yeah, yeah,
Now, Mayor, I just want to say this about Dynamite Brown, because that took courage. That took courage
right,
to de-escalate. It also shows that when they call him Unc, they got some respect for him as an experienced black man in the barbershop.
right,
Okay. And the barbershop's a sacred space. It's like, okay, don't mess up in here. But you
Right.
gave him a room to talk, Mike. We got to snap that.
yeah,
We
yeah.
got to
That's
snap
good.
that. All the years you've been coming in here and the training you've been through, he's a certified community health worker. He's a licensed lifestyle coach. You put it to practice right
Yeah,
there in this moment.
I just
Yeah.
have to commend, because when you think about it, between what you do in the community, your training, somebody's son is coming home to, and maybe that might not have happened had you not been there to intervene. It's a perfect example of how
Hey, man, with this ski
the
mask on, I was
workplace
scared. I got nervous.
Right.
Yeah, you know what courage is? Courage don't mean that you're unafraid, Mike. Courage means that you act appropriately in the face of fear.
And you did
To
that.
preach, man.
Right.
And the fact that you're able to say, I'm afraid, is freedom right there. A
Right,
black
right,
male to
right,
say, I was afraid, shows
right.
that everything that was talked about tonight, you just exemplified everything that was pretty much trying to be conveyed, to not be afraid to say, I'm tired as a
Right.
black male of being the leader in this community, and then they roll up in my shop like this, and I still got to rise to the occasion. I was
Right.
scared. So great
Yeah.
job, Mike.
Right. We love you, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You know how much we love you, man. So thank you so much, man. Absolutely. Well,
We got to do this again, man. We got to do this show.
We got to do this. Snap it up, man.
Yeah,
This was a
can we
great,
do this one
great
more
show.
time?
Yeah, we're
We'll
gonna
come
do.
back.
We'll
Absolutely,
come up.
Andre.
We'll come up with the time to do this again. Obviously, time is of we can do this. Well, let's do this again. You know, it was a poem that says um, the clock of life is set but once, and no man has the power to tell just when the clock will stop, be it late or early hour. Now is the only time we own. So let us live, love, toil with his will. Let's place no trust in tomorrow, for our clock may then be still. We have this moment, and we have used it well in sharing our truth. I have gained so much from each and every one. To our guests, thank you so much for this authentic conversation. Um, we will continue to have it, and you will be invited back over and over and over again because of what you offer to us. And we thank you in advance for your saying yes. Okay, so let's do that. Dr. T, love you, man. Reverend Selman, thank you so much for what you're doing. Dr. Bordier, thank you so much. Miss Fennell, thank you so much. Mr. Scott, thank you so much. For all of our new people, Miss Bruce and Mr. Gordon, the new folk, thank you. We love y'all so much. And to Wellness Warriors, thank you all for everything that you do. This was an absolutely incredible show. And as always, I'd like to leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with the perfect love. But more importantly, remember this. You got the power. Until the next cutting edge, have a wonderful day.